You're listening to episode number 14 of the Transform Your Life from the Inside Out podcast. And in this episode, I'm going to answer several questions from Abigail. Her two biggest questions are, what do I do when I'm tired of being me? And secondly, why am I not happier, more successful, and more impactful? Keep listening because I'm sure some of the things that I'm going to say to her will also apply to you. Hi, I'm Jim Fortin, and you're about to start transforming your life from the inside out with this podcast. I'm widely considered the leader in subconscious transformation, and I've coached super achievers all around the world for over 25 years. Here, you're going to find no rah-rah motivation and no hype, because this podcast is a combination of brain science, transformational psychology, and ancient wisdom all rolled into one to take your life to levels you've never thought possible. If you're wanting a lot more in life, to feel better, to heal, to have peace of mind, to feel powerful and alive, and to bring more abundance and prosperity into your life, then this podcast is for you because you're going to start learning how to master your mind and evolve your consciousness. And when you do that, anything you want then becomes possible for you. I'm glad you're here. All right, welcome to this Q&A episode. Before I dig in, I want to read to you her question because you may see some of yourself in part of her question. I don't know, we're all at different places, but there might be some of you in here somewhere. So, she goes, sometimes, especially lately, I'm just tired of being me. I can recognize that I've got so many talents and skills, but my life is a failure. I constantly read, meditate, observe my thoughts, but I'm struggling to let go of limiting thought patterns. I want to help myself so that I can help others. I just want to crack open my head, rewire the faulty wiring, and then get on with living. I'm a professional photographer who specializes in photographing women. Since choosing to specialize in this niche, I become fascinated by confidence, why some have it, why some don't, and how we can fully express our confidence. I recognize that it's my own struggles with confidence that have led to this path. I've since built an online academy for female freelancers to explore confidence on a personal, professional, and creative level. Although I'm a great technician, I can create good quality products and services, something is missing. I'm not reaching my full potential. I see other people who've got far less talent and far less experience, yet they seem to be flourishing. I can't pinpoint what's holding me back. I just don't know. Why am I not happier, more successful, and more impactful? Start with her question, why am I not happier, more successful, and more impactful? The simple reason, which you guys hear me talk about a lot, the simple reason is identity. And identity is who we are. See, you've heard me say before in other episodes that you have been programmed at birth to be who you are. And most people go through their entire lifetime never changing that programming. You've also heard me say before that we learn at the ages of 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 8 or 9. We learn how to be in the world by watching our parents. We learn what the world is. We learn what the world is not. Not only our parents, but our schools and our churches and our families and our social, organizations and our friends and our communities. They teach us what the world is like. So what I want to share with Abigail, and this applies to everyone, is your life, no matter where you are, no matter whether you're making $100 million a year or you're barely, scraping by, your life is where it is because you have been programmed with certain thought characteristics that bring you to exactly where you are now. You might have heard me say before also is that we can only do what we are. What I mean by that, to give you, and if you've heard this story before, well, then I'm going to tell it again, is a smoker. A smoker smokes because at the identity level, they are a smoker. And for example, I'm a non-smoker and I do not smoke. So look at your own life. Do you smoke cigarettes or do you not? If you do not smoke cigarettes, then you are a non-smoker. And if you do smoke cigarettes, then you are a smoker. I want to keep it really simple. And hopefully this is starting to sink in. But you are exactly where you are because of your unconscious paradigms, your characteristics, and your identity. So Abigail, the reason that you are where you are is because that's what you created. Now I'm going to go on a little further here and I will answer why am I not happier, more successful, and more impactful. I want to take this apart. When you say, why am I not happier? Well, the first thing is that you choose to have your emotional state. What I tell people is this, we look at our lives and many people say, this is where I am and I don't like where I am. And that is where I want to be, which is somewhere else. And that space between where you are and where you think you should be, for many people is unhappiness because they say, you know what, I'm at point A, but when I get to point B, then I'll be happy, but I'm going to be unhappy in the space between point A and point B. Secondly, when you say more successful, I don't know what you mean by that. More successful compared to or relative to what? And then more impactful. Again, that's complete relevance to you. Impactful could be, are you going to impact 1,000 people, 1,000,000, 100, 100 million? How many people are you going to impact? So if I take apart what you've given me there, what you're really saying is that you are at point A, you want to go to point B, you don't know how to get there, and you're going to be unhappy until you do. There's good news and there's bad news here. The good news is yes, you can get to point B, and the bad news is that you've got to change your identity to get there. Also, a big mistake that most people make, and I've obviously made this mistake as well in my past, is most people actually try to work to their vision to point B instead of from their vision to point B. What I mean by that is people are at point A and they say that I want to go to point B. However, when they're at point A, they're working from point A in terms of their identity, their characteristics, and their psychology. And the reason they're at point A is because they're working from point A. You have to work from point B. So what would the identity be of a person that's already at point B? That's where you have to work from, not from point A. Something I want to reemphasize here also is that we only do what our identity is, like I talked about smoking. And you cannot do what you are not internally. I mentioned cigarette smoking. I, I'm a non-smoker. Could I smoke a cigarette? Well, yes. Do I want to smoke a cigarette? No. Would I, cough up a lung? Probably so. I mean, I just don't want to inhale smoke. So what I'm saying there is because I am a non-smoker, it is hard for me to smoke. But yet, if you ask a smoker, you gave them a cigarette and said, here, light this up. They're going to say it's easy to smoke. Why? Because they are a smoker. So Abigail and everyone, please, please get this. Is you're unhappy because of the space between point A and point B, but you have to be the person at point B to get to point B. And where you're working from, clearly here, is you're working from point A. And literally by working from point A, you're keeping yourself trapped at point A. Abigail, in reading your question, it sounds like you may be in what I call learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is it's it's a psychological state, a system of thought that we believe that no matter what we do, nothing's going to change. And a lot of people are in that space. They've tried over and over and over again, and they've not gotten the results that they want. And then they actually, part of them still wants, to create more, but they're not getting there, and they believe that they cannot get there. One of the reasons we don't create what we want in life has nothing to do with us. Then what people do is when they do not achieve their goals, they personalize it and say, well, you know what, I'm just a bum, or I'm lazy, or I'm no good. Or what I heard somebody say one time to me is, well, you know what, I'm just damaged goods. Achieving and not achieving has nothing to do with your value. It's simply that most people are using, and I know this for a fact, most people don't know how to use their brain to actually change their habits or how to change their unconscious paradigms. But quite literally, if you're not getting the outcomes that you want, then you're running faulty strategies. Now, when I say strategies, strategy is any sequence of thought patterns. For example, if you're 100 pounds overweight, you know the strategy how to get there. And I'm generalizing here because I'm talking to a lot of people in this podcast and a lot of people, and everyone has a different interpretation. But for example, the person that, at one point was thin and now they're 100 pounds overweight, they're running a certain psychological strategy to create the outcomes. People that are trim and fit and healthy are also running a strategy. It's just a different strategy. So many times we're running a faulty strategy, which if you're not getting what you want, you're running a faulty strategy. And then, as I said, we personalize it and we make it about us. And then many times, more times than not, we make it as something derogatory, something negative, counterproductive about ourselves. As I said earlier, we're either broken or defective, or we're no good at this, or we'll never be able to change. So you may be into some learned helplessness. I'm not sure because I'm not talking to you one to one. I want to take a step back here because we're talking about learned helplessness, and I wanted to go into pragmatic and practical application. But I've said this over and over again is the simplest way to transform from the inside out is subconscious reprogramming. I did do an episode on that. So what I would tell you to do, let's just keep this simple for right now. What I would tell you to do is get online and look for, search for something along the lines of hypnosis audio downloads. And you're going to find a ton of sites out there, Abigail, and everyone else listening. You're going to find a ton of sites. Find a site that resonates with you. And I mean, they're inexpensive, anywhere from $5 to $15. Buy an audio that addresses what you think your biggest limitation is that's keeping you trapped where you are. I'm reluctant to make a referral because there are many different kinds of sites out there and it's a very personal thing. So I'm going to tell you to do your own Google search. But, I could get into all the analytics and the psychology and all the steps. And candidly, I don't think a lot of that stuff works after watching people for a lot of years and being a hypnotherapist. I remember one time a woman said to me, she goes, you know what, I've been to therapy and I can tell you diagnostically everything that's wrong with me. And I've been in therapy for 10 years, but you know what? I don't feel any better. Why? Because a lot of therapy is talk therapy, and I'm sorry if that offends any therapist out there or any of that, but that's a fact. Many times, most therapy is talk therapy, which addresses the analytical aspect and the cognitive aspect and the executive part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, but it doesn't address the unconscious paradigms. And until you change the unconscious paradigms, nothing else is going to change. So if you happen to be in the learned helplessness, which is a place where I don't know if you are or not, but when you said, you know what, I'm just tired of my life, I'm sick of being me, what I'm curious about is, are you willing and wanting to do something about that, or are you throwing in the towel? Now, the fact that you actually wrote in tells me that you're wanting to do something, you just don't know what. Well, take my suggestion and actually just, search for some hypnosis audios. Then you said your life is a failure. And I'm curious about, and I want you to notice how you're generalizing. You're literally saying in that comment, which is a general statement, my life is a failure. Well, is all of your life a failure? I mean, have you been a failure in every single aspect of your life? I think not. What you're simply saying is because I'm not getting and I'm not creating what I want. And by the way, you don't get what you want, you get what you are. And what you are is your unconscious paradigms. But I think what you're doing there, and it's actually, some self-sabotage, is that you're saying that my life, my entire life, is the way you've generalized it, is a failure because I haven't created what I want. And I bet you right now, Abigail and everyone else listening, because some of you can relate to this, if you look at other areas of your life, because no one's like perfect and a success in every area of life, you will find successes. I mean, I have worked with people that make millions and millions and millions a year, yet their family's falling apart. Or I've worked with people that have amazing families and they can't put two nickels together. Everyone is not, hunky-dory great, a Texas phrase, in every single area of their life. What's interesting also is that you said you have talents and skills. So you do recognize that you have talents and skills. I've got a suspicion here, Abigail, and I'm going to actually hop off here and go on a little bit of a tangent. One of the reasons I see people not being really successful, especially online, like you're talking about, is they're practitioners and they're very good at what they do, which is a practitioner. What they're not good at is marketing. And I'm going to tell every one of you that might be a marketer listening to this now. And this is a quote by Jay Abraham. Jay is literally considered one of the foremost marketing experts in the world. And he has long said that if you cannot market what you do better than you can do what you do, you will not be doing what you do very long. So what I see a lot of is people that are practitioners, whether they be CPAs or they want to teach people financial management or basket weaving or how to do, whatever. What I see is that they're very skilled at being a practitioner, but they're not skilled at being a marketer. And because they're not skilled at being a marketer, they can't market what they practice. And because they can't market what they practice, they don't make any money. And then they think they are a failure. Everyone listen up right now. If you are in any kind of online marketing, if it were me, because this is what I've done over the years and I've learned the hard way, is if you're in any kind of online marketing, I would do my best to become like a savvy marketer. In this day and age, you can find tons of marketing information. Just go to YouTube. You can find anything you want about marketing. Watch videos by Chet Holmes, who's an old friend of mine who's no longer on the planet, or Jay Abraham, or Dan Kennedy. These guys are marketing and sales gurus. Watch their stuff and learn how to market what you do. Because when you learn how to market what you do, you'll be more successful at what you do. Why? Because you'll be attracting more people. Okay, so I went on a bit of a tangent there, but I've got another good friend of mine here, and I definitely, you probably don't know who she is, so it's not name dropping, and I'm not a fan of name dropping, but her name is Shama Hyder. We've been friends for a long time. Actually, she now is, she's been recognized by Fortune magazine and Business Week and Inc. and New York Times and all these accolades she's won over the years for being a social media marketing maven. She and I were talking years ago, and I 100% agree with what she said. And this is also identity and self image. But she said most people won't go the extra mile. So I'm asking all of you right now, maybe you're wanting to build a business for those of you that are, but how much time are you investing becoming the most savvy marketing expert that you can be? Okay, next is what I'm curious about here is what's more important to you, Abigail, because you might be in a little bit of self-pity. And what I'm curious about, you said you want to help people. So I'm curious, what's more important to you? To be in your self-pity and your resignation? Because see, most people actually work from resignation as opposed to possibility. Are you more actually concerned, and is it more important for you to be in resignation, or is it more important for you to be in service to women? If I said you can only pick one, you can actually be in resignation or you can be in service. Which are you going to pick? And if you're going to choose service, that means actually get moving. That means learning to reprogram your identity. I did an episode on that here, the one on subconscious reprogramming. Did you go, I don't know if you've listened to it, go get that book. It's a classic book. Read the book. But the biggest mistake that a lot of people make is they read the book and they're like, oh, this is a good book. This is nice. Oh, yeah, that's informative. Not even realizing by their internal patterns, their mental patterns, they filter out 90% of what they read. So they like the book, and then what they do is they take the book, put it on the shelf, and they forget about it. And by the next day, they're right back to their old patterns again. Somewhere, a place that I work from in my own life is I know that when I want to create something, I know that I have to make it my highest value. I know that I have to make it a priority. So let's say, for example, that you want to grow your business. Are you making that your highest value? Let's say that you want to become healthy and you want to be very healthy. Is that your highest value? And when I say highest value, what I mean is, do you eat, sleep, and drink it? When you want to achieve big things, you have to make it a high value or it's never going to happen. And I know that all of you listening, you can relate to that. And I even know in my own life, the same thing applies. We must make what we want to create high value to us. Okay, Abigail, you also talk about struggling to let go of limiting thought patterns. The question I have is what patterns? And then I'm curious about what makes you think you can't let go of patterns. And when you say patterns, what you may be talking about is actually thought habit. And everything's a habit. Research demonstrates that 95% of what you do and think today, you did and thought yesterday. And that's actually learning how to let go of our habits. And obviously, I can't go into detail on every bit of this here, but there's also one of the earlier episodes was on habits. So go back in the library here at the, in my podcast and listen to the episode on habits. And then I'm curious about, well, you said thought patterns, counterproductive ones, limiting. How many do you have? Do you have 3? Do you have 70? Do you have 11? How many do you have? And then I'm also going to ask you is, why not just let them go? So I'm going to ask you a simple question here, Abigail, and that question is, of all these limiting thought patterns that you have, is which one would be the most valuable for you to let go of? So consider that. And actually, I've done a lot of work in this, and I know that I refer back to their podcast, and that's just my nature. So you know what? That's what I do. So I'm going to say go listen to one of the other episodes because I address a lot of this. But there's a concept called theory of constraint. It's an economic concept created back, I believe, in the 1800s. I won't go into who created it and how. But the bottom line is this, is what you want to look for is you want to look for the biggest constraint in your life and remove that constraint. It's like a bottleneck. And when you remove that constraint, your life opens up. A simple metaphor here is let's say that you've got a manufacturing company and you've got 3 manufacturing lines. Well, if one line is broken down, then obviously you're at a 33% constraint. So if you want to go back to full productivity again, then what you do is you don't actually take breaks and go to lunch, I'm just making this up, and do other things. You focus your attention on getting this one assembly line back up. Why? Because it's the biggest constraint to your business growth. So I tell people, look, what is the biggest constraint in your life? And then use the tools that you're learning here to remove that constraint. And when you do, you're going to be shocked. I mean, literally shocked at how quickly your life moves forward. Another question that I have for Abigail and everyone else listening is, what do your patterns do for you? What do your limiting patterns do for you? And when I ask people, I will say, what do you hope to gain from that limiting belief? Many people, their first answer will be, well, of course, nothing at all. It's limiting. I know it's limiting and I do not want it. Well, for everything you believe, there's a secondary gain. So the secondary gain could be, and I'm only making this up generically, but I see this in a lot of people, is people will run limiting patterns. And I'll say, what do you hope to gain from that pattern? They will say nothing. And we'll dig a little deeper. And what we find is, you know what? If I keep hiding, if I keep staying in my comfort zone, then you know what? That keeps me safe. So my secondary gain, the payoff that I get for keeping the limiting belief, my payoff is that I get to stay safe and people are not going to judge me and reject me. So something that I have for you, every one of you listening, is look at the thoughts that you think hold you back and then ask yourself this question. What do I gain from holding this belief? And then look at your secondary gain. And 9 times out of 10, again, what you gain is you gain safety and security. So therefore, you want to hold on to the limiting belief because of the security you gain by not being judged or criticized or not being deemed good enough. Okay, Abigail, another question for you is these limiting beliefs, which I don't know how many you have, to what degree. And also a question I was going to ask you is, even though you've got limiting beliefs, can you operate anyway? You seem like you're saying, well, you know what? I will get started once I no longer have any limiting beliefs, which means you're never going to get started. I've coached a lot of very, very successful people, and what they do is they start anyway. Something that I tell people when they get into fear is to ask themselves, and everyone gets into it to some degree or another, I will say, ask yourself this question. Can I do it anyway? Because guess what? You can. And then many times what we do is we do it anyway without even recognizing we're doing it anyway. And then what we do is we're like, wow, that wasn't so bad. I didn't die and the world didn't come to an end. Okay, so another question that I have for you, Abigail, is I want you to get really emotional with, where am I going to be a year from now if I choose, which everything is a choice, where am I going? And some of you are going to argue with that. But that'll be a whole nother episode about everything is a choice. What I do want to do is make a little caveat there, as research has demonstrated that our brain actually makes our choices for us. However, what they know in the research is that we have consciousness and reflective thinking, and we can change that brain-based decision literally a couple of nanoseconds before we actually make the decision. But what I'm going to share with you right now, and I may get some pushback on this, and this is fine, is that everything in life is a choice. Wherever you are in life, whether or not you want to accept it, is because you choose to be there. And I'm laughing and I'm curious about what kind of pushback I'm going to get for making that comment. Okay, Abigail, you also went on to say that you were interested in confidence. What I want to point out is that confidence is an illusion. What you want is more competence. And if I had to guess, you're probably not competent in some areas that actually build your business for you. That's why you're not more impactful. All the time I hear people saying, well, I want more confidence. When I work with real estate agents, I want more confidence in my listing and buying presentations. And it doesn't matter the industry. People say all the time they want more confidence. Well, I say that's an illusion because confidence comes from competence. So what you want to work on is you want to work at becoming competent. Now, many people actually work from perfectionist strategies. I've got to be great at something before I can do it, which is a failure strategy. Jim Collins, I forget the name of the book. I think it's called Good to Great. He says, before you can be great, you've got to be good. Before you can be good, you've got to be bad. Before you can be bad, you've got to do something. So just start. And that scares a lot of people because they think, well, if I just start, and especially overly analytical people, if I don't have all the pieces put together, then I'm going to actually not put it together right, and then I'm going to actually waste time and I'm going to make a mistake. So instead of wasting time and making a mistake, guess what? I'm going to just do nothing and sit on the sidelines and then hope something changes. Also, when you say that you want more confidence, how specifically do you want more confidence? And then I alluded to, something a little earlier about this is how much more confident do you need to be? I remember the first time that I spoke. I've been a speaker, and I don't do professional speaking anymore, but I did it for probably 20 years. And I remember that I started out with small audiences, five, they're not even audiences. I mean, 5 or 7 people, you can put them in a car. But I remember the first time there was this barrier in my mind, the first time that I was in front of an audience with 1,000 people. And I'm candidly, I was nervous. I was like, oh my God, 1,000 people. What if I mess up? What if I make a mistake? And over the years, I've been in front of millions of people, and it doesn't affect me. Like even in this podcast, if I misspeak or I say something or I dangle a participle or whatever, I just don't care. Where I work from, well, I mean, I care, but really where I work from is, you know what? Just help people. Just have a good time. Just hop on the podcast, share your knowledge, share what you've learned over the years, and then you know what? Hope that it lands, hope that it helps people. And when I work from that place, I don't need the confidence. Why? Because it's more important for me to help people than it is to worry about how confident I am or I am not. Something else is if you're waiting, any of you listening, if you're waiting for the confidence, there's a good chance you will never start. Why? Because see, I said confidence is an illusion that comes from competence. And if you never start, you never develop competence. And if you never develop competence, you never develop confidence. And if you never have confidence, you don't start. And it's a vicious cycle that keeps you trapped. That's why I tell people, you know what? Just do something. Also, that being said, and I'm going to go back to this, many people are perfectionists and they're afraid that if they don't do it right from the very beginning, and as actually many people can't even start till they think it's perfect in their mind. And I want to share something that I learned from a friend of mine, and I have found this to be invaluable. And he heard it from someone else, and we all just amalgamate information that we hear in our lives. But he said 100% perfection is failure. 70% perfection is success, which means whatever you're doing, doesn't matter if it's women's photography or whatever it is, you put it together, you do the best you can in the moment, and you put it out. Even my transformational coaching program, I've done transformational work for a lot of years. And when I look back at my first program, it's not even the same program now because I work on it. And it's at a place now where, you know what, I'm done with it after all the years of this particular program. But you know what? You put it out there, and then what you do is you recalibrate, you measure, you look at it, you tweak, you put it out there, you recalibrate, you measure, and you tweak. But if any of you, I'm telling you right now, please listen. If you're working from putting it out there and it's got to be perfect, because if it's not perfect, people are going to judge you, you're going to be sitting on the side of the road like a car up on blocks for many, many years, wondering why people that are less talented than you make more money than you. Then she went on to say, to recapitulate this, is I see other people who've got far less talent and far less experience, and they seem to be flourishing. All right, let me give you an example here, and I don't want to mention any last names, but let's just, because they may listen to this, I don't know. Let's say that we have Susan and John. Many, many years ago, when I taught hypnosis in New York City, I remember one of the classes. Susan and John both lived on Long Island. And they both said, you know what, I want to become a professional hypnotherapist. Now, Susan really, she kind of wasn't the great, at least then wasn't so good. She wasn't a natural. But I look at John, and John was amazing. He took to hypnosis like a duck to water. He was really, really good at it. And I remember a year later, I ran into them again, and she had a thriving practice or on Long Island. John did not. And the reason why is because she just went out and did it and figured it out as she went along. And that made all the difference. I remember one time when we were doing a hypnosis training, Somebody asked my boss, they said, Jim's only been doing hypnosis a year, and this was a lot of years ago, 1999. They said, Jim's only been doing hypnosis a year. How come he's so good at it? And the answer was really surprising to me and very powerful. My boss actually looked at me and looked at the room and said, easy. He does it. Meaning I just go do it. And I remember when I started, I fumbled and I wasn't that good and I was learning. And I didn't really worry about the confidence that I had because I knew that I was helping people. But the more that I did it, the more competent that I became. The more competent I became. When I became competent, that gave me more confidence. And then I was not, concerned about who I took on as a client or what I did. So hopefully that answers that part of your question, Abigail. I'm going to wrap up where we started. You said, why am I not happier, Abigail? Why am I not more successful? And why am I not more impactful? Well, the reason why is because you are choosing all of this at some level. You're using the wrong strategies, which I'd mentioned earlier. So my suggestion to you is I would look for what is the biggest constraint that holds me back. And then what I would do is I'd get online and find some self-hypnosis audio that actually addresses what I think that biggest constraint is. That, in my opinion, is a great place to start. Okay, so transformational takeaways from this particular episode. Well, reminder, and you're going to hear me say it a lot in these episodes, is everything comes down to identity. You cannot do what you are not, and it's easy to do what you are, like the example I gave you about smoking. So reminders are things I want you to, keep in mind is identity reprogramming. You've got to reprogram your identity. You also are driven by your brain-based habits, which come from the reptilian part of the brain. We get into fear. The two biggest fears, again, are, people are going to reject me, which is abandonment, or the fear of inadequacy, I'm not good enough. And people are going to tell me they're not good enough, and they're going to reject me. And you've heard me say before, I don't know if I've done a lot of audio stuff today, but you've heard me say before somewhere that no matter what you do, people are going to judge you. So why not do what you love to do, because you're going to get judged anyway. And then the power of choice. Wherever we are is a choice. Okay, the next episode, which I believe is number 15, if I have my number count right, is about your suffering. And you may or may not have read somewhere or heard that the Buddha said, your greatest cause of suffering is attachment. And the next episode is about attachment, because anywhere that you have misery in your life or pain in your life psychologically, it's because you're holding on to something. Okay, so thank you so much for listening and sharing. I think we're in week number 8 now of this podcast, and even this morning we are still on the front page of News and Noteworthy. So I really, I'm humbled. And I have huge gratitude to you and for you for listening and for sharing this podcast. Okay, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you over on Wednesday when we talk about attachment. Catch you on the next episode. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this entire podcast. If you're the kind of person who likes to help others, then share this with your friends and family. If you found value, they will too. So please share via your social media channels. Also, if you have questions, I'm here to assist. You can email me questions to support@jimfortin.com, and I may even use your question for a future podcast episode. Also, if you want transformational content like this daily, connect with me on Instagram. My Instagram name is I am Jim Fortin. Finally, I do have a personal request. I believe that we're all here to help others and to grow and evolve ourselves. Together, you and I, let's help more people. If you would please leave a review on iTunes, and a good one, by the way. I'd be grateful, and through your assistance together, we can transform more lives. Thanks for listening.